Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz, and this season we will be unpacking real trends, hot topics in the workplace around allyship and inclusion. Our goal is that each week you leave with tangible tools, information, practical strategies that you can take back to allies at your organization. Let's dig in to this week's topic.
Favorite topics to talk about right now is Gen Z. So roughly born, and there's no authority on this. Pew Research Center is probably the closest to an authority on generations, but there's a lot of loose, definitions of years. So I kind of broad swath it more. Usually late 90s, 96, 97 are the most common years that people kind of use as a breaking point for Gen Z. So born late 90s to early 2010s, okay? This is about 30% of the world's population and is expected to eclipse baby boomers and the largest generation by 2025. So what makes Gen Z so different, and how are they influencing corporate America? It's a really fascinating question. And while I'm fearful of kicking the can to the next generation to solve the problems they didn't create from older generations, we know a few things about Gen Z that makes them really interesting. And as somebody that's kind of a Gen Xer, millennial, again, based on birth year, I was born in 82, so it tends to be more millennial, but I've seen, I tend to identify more as Gen X. And it's important to say we've got, 4 big generations in the workforce today. But the reason Gen Z is so interesting is they're the first generation to grow up entirely in the digital age, right? So millennials like me, we didn't get cell phones till we're in our 20s. We had pagers. We didn't have social media when we grew up. That's not the case for Gen Z. All of them had access to these things. And so unlike their predecessors, they're often characterized by a stronger entrepreneurial spirit. We know higher education rates, for example, have gone down, and they are highly driven by meaningful impact in the world and very attuned to social issues like climate change. Now, what does this mean for corporate America? We've been largely resistant to change. The workplace hasn't changed that much, even with COVID. The workplace has largely stayed the same in the last 60 to 70 years. Post-World War II was the last momentous occasion. So it kind of begs the question if we're ready to shift, because I don't think that they're going to absorb these traditional norms as much as past generations did. 2 reasons why. Millennials, when we entered the workforce, there was a lot of economic instability. There's certainly uncertainty today, but we had the 2001 dot-com bubble, of course, the 2008 financial crisis. It didn't have the kind of power that Gen Z has today. They're much bigger as a generation, and the labor shortage is persistent and will continue for quite some time. And so Gen Z has more power than past generations did. And here's a few ways that they're going to ask for corporate America to shift. Technology, using technology more rapidly and pivoting more quickly and responding to social issues is definitely going to be one. When Gen Z asks for feedback, the reason they're doing that is because they grew up with social media at their fingertips, where they got feedback right away via likes and comments on their posts. They expect that to be true in the workplace as well. Diversity and inclusion, we know that they're asking about this in the hiring process or combing websites, job boards, because they grew up in the peak of immigration, and globalization is really important to their values. You think about values as a generation, there are some fundamental shifts, and one of them is about sustainability. Environmental concerns are a top priority for Gen Z, and they prioritize the companies they support and work for based on sustainability and ethical practices. So businesses that don't adopt sustainable, measurable platforms really risk being out of sync with Gen Z's values. Flexibility, they grew up seeing their caregivers work really long hours and accumulate stuff. There's a reason the tiny house or nomadic type of nature appeals to Gen Z. They would rather work to live, right, than live to work. And that's something that shifted over time with baby boomers being, more traditional in that sense of needing to work to accumulate things. Gen Z is less interested in that. They're much more interested in flexible work arrangements where you measure my work getting done versus me being seen in the office. Last key value of Gen Z that's a little different too is work is more than a paycheck. So you get a paycheck, that's your thanks. I remember hearing that quite a bit when I entered the workforce, like, oh, there's more to it, right? Financial rewards are not as likely to be appealing to this generation because they value experiences over material possessions. So not only is this important from an employee perspective, but a consumer perspective, right? Think about this massive consumer base that we will have to shift how we market our products, how we develop our products and services. This generation is challenging traditional norms that are largely outdated. They're demanding accountability and pushing, for that more inclusive, sustainable, and tech-savvy corporate world. Think about how we could pivot and really meet Gen Z's expectations, because not only will you attract more talent in a hyper-competitive, global landscape, but you'll also appeal to future consumers and constituents and community members that you want to stay relevant for. And when I think about generational intersections with diversity work, it's about staying relevant. It's about being relevant to those we hope are attracted to our platform, to our products, to our services. So how do we stay relevant is often by listening, asking questions, better understanding these differences, because Gen Z is highly unlikely to be changed by us, meaning corporate. They're far more likely to change corporate because of their size, because of labor shortages, because of the power that they uniquely have that past generations have not had. As a millennial, I'm envious. I wish I'd been born a little later so I might have some of that power to share, but I'm in it. I want to listen, and I hope that they don't face the same challenges that my generation did with change. So cheers to Gen Z. Let's hope and support them in making the workplace more inclusive.
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. My hope is that you walked away with a tangible tool, insight, or information that you can share with other allies on the journey. If you liked this week's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a tremendous amount to us. We'll be back next week with another hot topic.